Welcome to the deep dive. So you sent us Journeying Out, this book from 2004.
That's right.
And we've been digging into it, looking for the really core ideas. And it's not just about churches, is it? We're looking broader.
Not at all. It's really about community engagement in general, how any community can, well, thrive.
Right. And those sort of surprising power dynamics that pop up when people connect. And also how you, the learner, can actually grow from stepping outside your usual bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to navigate some of that. Avoid maybe the pitfalls, like just thinking about meeting needs.
That whole needs meeting trap.
Yeah, and find the maybe deeper motivations and outcomes of really connecting.
Exactly. Journeying out isn't just descriptive. It really gets into the why, the history, the theology, even the sociology behind community ministry.
He's saying.
It really does.
Yeah.
About what it all means for us individually and, for society, trying to find that real connection.
Okay, so let's get into it. The book kicks off with something pretty striking, the sheer longevity of the church.
Yeah, that example is amazing.
These Russian visitors just blown away that the Diocese of London dates back to 604 AD.
Incredible, isn't it?
In a world where organizations come and go, what does that kind of staying power actually tell? It's got to be more than just, like, old stone.
Oh, definitely. It points to this remarkable ability to adapt. The book highlights that period in the 80s and 90s.
Right, when the traditional voluntary sector was, well, struggling a bit.
Exactly. And churches often became these really vital community hubs. Things like the Church Urban Fund were huge.
So clergy suddenly found themselves doing project management,
Yeah.
networking.
Pretty much. It was a real shift. Moving beyond just the traditional pastoral role, it wasn't just filling a gap. It felt like a genuine evolution.
And this is where it gets, for me, really fascinating. This kind of hands-on work, getting involved in the community, it actually started changing how people inside the church saw things.
A real theological shift for many, yeah.
Actually meeting people, facing difficulties, it challenged their assumptions, made them see how different Jesus's own approach was. It wasn't just like distant charity.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The book really stresses this growing awareness of gospel values being distinct, sometimes, radically different from secular approaches, even well-meaning ones.
Right.
This direct engagement fostered a kind of humility, a recognition that, hey, the church itself isn't immune to the biases and inequalities out there.
So refocus things back onto embodying the gospel message itself.
Precisely. Not just keeping the institution going.
Oh, okay, and sticking with people in need. The book brings in Conrad Borma's work, tracing rich and poor through the Bible.
That historical perspective is powerful.
Seeing how inequality emerged, how the prophets spoke against it. But the bit that really stood out was the Greek words for poor, tochos, and pane.
Ah, yes, that distinction. Crucial.
What's the difference there? Why does it matter?
Well, panes was sort of the respectable poor, living frugally, maybe, but with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
But tochos, that's different.
How so?
Tochos is the word Jesus uses when he says, blessed are the poor. And it means someone utterly destitute, a beggar, someone society might not see as respectable at all.
Wow. So it completely bypasses our modern ideas of the deserving poor versus the undeserving.
Exactly. It forces us to ask who Jesus really focused on. Who do we focus on?
Okay. Now, all this talk about reaching out, it can feel daunting. The book mentions this trap of anxiety.
Yeah, that inward focus,
Yeah,
fear.
that stops us engaging. How do we, get past that?
Well, the book introduces this really interesting idea. It calls it God's gracious economy.
Okay.
The idea is basically that when we shift focus away from our own worries and anxieties and instead actively try to live out Jesus's teachings, strive for righteousness, that's when we become church in a living way.
So it's about the action itself, trusting the outward movement.
Yes, trusting that action, even when we feel uncertain, can lead to these unexpected grace-filled results, like those winter night shelters in London.
Right. They just started because churches kind of pushed past their anxieties and opened their doors.
Exactly. That simple outward step created something really powerful.
And that connects, doesn't it, to this principle of obliquity. I found that really insightful.
John Kay's idea. Yeah, it's brilliant.
That sometimes the best way to hit a target is, well, not to aim straight at it.
Precisely. Like Disney focusing on guest experience, not just profit. Or Merck saying medicine is for people first.
So how does that map onto community work?
Well, if a church, or any group really, gets too focused on its own survival or just ticking boxes on meeting needs, it can actually miss the deeper point.
So things like money or numbers,
Yeah.
they should be secondary.
A subsidiary awareness, the book calls it, a byproduct of focusing on the real mission connection, service, living out those core values. If the secondary stuff becomes primary, you risk losing the main thing.
But the book also warns about going too far the other way, right? Getting so focused on social action that you become, well, just another agency. It talks about avoiding the social gospel trap.
Yeah, there's a caution there. Historically, the social gospel was about achieving the kingdom of God through social progress. Good intentions, obviously.
What?
But the book warns against churches feeling this heavy sense of obligation, like they have to run certain programs. It can lead to burnout or losing sight of the core spiritual purpose.
A danger of becoming, like, secularized from the inside, just providing practical stuff.
That's the risk it flags. If it's only about meeting practical needs, the deeper dimension can get lost.
Because that needs meeting approach.
Wow.
It sets up a power dynamic, doesn't it? Givers and receivers.
Exactly. And the book argues the gospel actually flips that. It suggests those considered needy often hold this incredible potential for transformation for themselves and for those reaching out.
So the real blessings come from just connecting.
As equals.
From journeying out based on shared humanity, what the book calls fraternal relations. Not primarily aiming to fix someone.
Which brings us to Max Weber and the iron cage of bureaucracy. How does that fit in? Weber's idea of the iron cage of rationality. It describes how systems, even systems of care, can become rigid.
Right. Rules, risk assessments, agencies with their own agendas.
Exactly. And over time, the system can end up prioritizing its own survival over genuine, spontaneous, person-to-person care. It can stifle things. Professionals can feel like they're just part of the machine.
So if bureaucracy isn't the whole answer, what's the alternative? The book keeps returning to fraternal relations. What does that actually mean day to day?
It means really taking seriously the gospel idea that everyone has inherent worth, that the poor, the marginalized aren't just recipients, they have potential. Proposition 10 of the book is key.
Which says,
If God is Father, then everyone is our brother or sister. Simple but profound. It's a call to challenge our own biases, our resentments, and build relationships based on that shared identity.
and these connections aren't just about, being nice. The book talks about them creating thin places, moments of real connection.
Yes. And ways to actually break free from our own negativity. When we engage from that place of shared humanity, especially, as the book puts it, empty-handed.
Without an agenda to fix them.
Right. Then we open ourselves to what it calls a cascade of grace, unexpected blessings, real reciprocity.
Okay, let's talk social capital. It's a term we hear a lot, but the book seems quite specific about it.
It is. It defines social capital as those networks of trust and reciprocity, the glue holding a community together. It's got personal benefits, support, information, but also wider public good like economic stability.
And it distinguishes between bonding and bridging capital.
Crucial distinction. Bonding is about strengthening ties within your own group solidarity. Bridging is about building connections between different groups, connecting with strangers, building wider trust.
And while bonding is good, the book, referencing Putnam, warns it can also be divisive. Create us versus them.
It can, yes.
Yeah.
And Wilson's analysis has brought in, too, how a lack of social capital can fuel negative subcultures, especially in poorer areas. Government programs might try to build it.
Like neighborhood renewal.
Right. But the book asks, can these top-down professional services really generate that vital bridging social capital, the stuff that connects different sorts of people?
But it argues churches are uniquely positioned here. Unsurpassed generators of bridging social capital? How? Through the parish system.
Exactly. The idea of a parish tied to a specific place, reaching beyond just the regular attendees. It's inherently designed to connect diverse people. The Isle of Dogs example is powerful.
Where different churches work together against the BMP.
Yes, using shared activities, dialogue, finding common ground, building trust across divides, and also the idea of re-neighboring.
Christians deliberately choosing to live in disadvantaged areas.
To model that reciprocity, to be present and build those bridges intentionally.
This all seems to lead towards living a story-rich life. What's the connection between bridging social capital and having meaningful stories?
Well, when you step out of your comfort zone, engage with people who are different, face challenges together, you gather experiences. These become the stories that shape your identity, and these stories travel across cultures, across time.
The book gives some examples. The
Yeah.
umbrella. The mother and the gypsy caravans.
Yeah, really vivid ones. The umbrella story is about a missed chance for generosity. The caravan story is about unexpected trust. And then there's Gwen, consistently connecting with homeless people. It's about the power of showing up.
And these potent stories, the book says, they're personal, they build identity, mix hope and struggle, make you want to respond, and they hit you emotionally.
Exactly. And it connects this to the role of older people sharing their life wisdom, that dialectical logic gained through experience shaping the next generation. Seeing the third age not as winding down, but as a time for generativity, for contribution.
So these stories, they have a beginning, middle, and a consequence. They shape our inner map.
Our map of our hearts, yeah. But there's a warning, too, about degenerative stories.
Stories that reinforce prejudice.
Or limit understanding. It's easy for community projects, unintentionally, to actually strengthen stereotypes if they're not careful. We tend to resist stuff that challenges our views.
Which is why training and reflection are so important.
Vital. To avoid just confirming biases. The example of the volunteers and the asylum seekers shows that danger. But equally, the book shows the unexpected friendships, the personal growth, like the meal rota for the elderly, leading to real connection. Character develops through this stuff.
Okay, let's shift focus to the suburban challenge. The book's quite critical here, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It looks at the potential downsides of that emphasis on privacy, projecting success, hiding vulnerability.
Makes it hard to foster compassion if everyone's pretending everything's fine.
That's the argument. And the dominant messages are often about competition, self-interest. Even though we know more stuff doesn't equal more happiness.
And it suggests suburban life often involves repressing basic human things, avoiding discomfort strangers.
Sort of shielding oneself from the rawness of life. Plus, there's often an unspoken power dynamic. Residents might be in positions of relative power without even thinking about it.
It quotes Becker about laying waste to the world to forget ourselves, and anticipatory obedience, conforming without being told to.
Heavy stuff. It points to the difficulty of individuation, becoming your own person in that kind of environment, and suggests faith can be an anchor.
So community ministry in the suburbs, it's almost like therapy for those shielded from life, enabling venturesome love.
That's the idea. Challenging that sort of Philistine behavior, Kierkegaard talked about the fear of the full range of human experience, needing deep literacy to see how power works and question the status quo.
Which leads nicely into the idea of being without power in encounters. Why is that important for mission?
Well, the wartime story in the book, the soldier feeling compelled to go to that dugout. It shows how God's work is often mysterious, beyond our control or understanding. Power isn't the point.
And the example of the mother and baby home.
A stark illustration of how societal norms, hegemonic power, can condemn the vulnerable based on hidden biases. The system protects the powerful, often making the unfairness invisible to those within it.
And the church historically propped up some of that moral respectability, but has lost that power now.
Yes, and the book critiques sluttish theology for not really tackling this concept of hegemony, this invisible power structure, head-on.
It even links it to sin.
Yeah, arguing there's often a reluctance, even in sociology, to name human sinfulness, that tendency to serve our anxious selves, often by appeasing the powerful, like the social workers labeling women morally defective.
Just caught in the system, unaware.
Pulled by the hegemonic order. Which is why the book suggests forgiveness is so crucial, echoing Jesus, because often we don't know what we're doing.
Okay, let's talk about the explicit domain. Christian teaching, symbols. The book says this is harder now.
With the decline of Christendom, yeah. Church structures can feel a bit isolated, and it's not just that people don't know the symbols.
They might actively dislike them. The Eucharist example, seeing it as macabre.
Potentially. Cultural shifts mean symbols don't travel well. Blood means contamination now, perhaps not life. Though the Ash Wednesday example showed a symbol can connect if it resonates with current events.
Like the Iraq War context.
Right. But generally, the book notes a dominance of low symbols. Functional, everyday language, losing that connection to mystery, to the sacred.
So if explicit teaching and old symbols aren't always landing, what about the foundational domain? What's the approach there?
Less about apologetics, more about apt liturgy, worship that actually speaks to people's real emotional struggles.
How does that work?
Key things. Naming emotions, honestly, linking them to universal human struggles, acknowledging God is with us in the struggle, and using simple, meaningful, symbolic acts.
And liturgy can happen outside church walls, too.
Definitely. Engaging the community in identifying priorities. Parker's model is mentioned. naming the issue, lamenting its effects, confessing our part in it. And hospitality is central here.
Real hospitality host duties, guest rights.
Exactly. Careful communication, respecting where people are at, even if they don't believe.
And church community centers play a big role here.
Huge potential, offering hospitality, building godly human community, but it needs to be proactive, not just renting space. That's where the community chaplain idea comes in.
A priest for the everyday.
Yeah, representing God's presence alongside people with clear boundaries, of course, ministering to groups, being known to hirers, and a key role is reducing anxiety. By being a calm presence, a step-down transformer, modeling containment, understanding anxiety, respecting autonomy, empathy. Those are key skills.
Okay, finally, the vocational domain and moral selving. What's that about?
Moral selving is how we build our moral identity today, gathering ideas and acting on them, often without clear, agreed-upon rules. This can cause moral agony.
So the church's role is to help people navigate that, develop a moral self.
Yes, especially as traditional sources like jobs don't offer that framework as much anymore. It's part of individuation, separating from the crowd, which takes courage. And the key is acting, engaging, not just thinking.
So encounters are crucial again.
Face-to-face encounters become really rich when fixed rules fade. Truth becomes relational, known through relationship, like Jesus saying, I am the truth. So you need hospitality to relationships, not just ideas.
And these encounters challenge us, make us reflect.
Exactly. That's the transformation. Humility is key, being open to experience, to criticism. Community ministry provides structures for this venturesome love.
Leading to unexpected insights, even theological ones, maybe seeing our own flaws more clearly.
Definitely. Volunteering can reveal our own sin, our need for grace. The book connects this to the modern experience economy, people seeking transformation.
And the church is like the original transformation business.
Exactly. But it needs to offer more than cheap transformation. Real moral selving is a journey. So the church needs pre-formation activities, things that prepare and fortify people.
Like the pilgrimage example, or those youth events.
Right. Soul Survivor, St. Michael's, Camden Town. Events that maybe offer a first step, reshape views of the church, give a taste of that deeper moral journey.
So the final chapter, When the Wine Runs Out, a reflection on the church's current challenges.
Acknowledging the reality decline, seeming irrelevance, saying this situation is new, old habits won't cut it, resisting the urge to just keep doing the same things with less.
And the role of lay people.
Not just doing more church jobs, but embracing that outward struggle. The church needs to let go of the hangover from its powerful past and trust the vulnerable, the margins.
It draws a parallel with AA.
Honesty, commitment to struggle, faith. That's the path forward, it suggests. Referencing Bosch, it underlines that mission has always had to adapt.
Okay. So, learner, as you process all this from journeying out, think about that weave. Community engagement, your own growth, maybe spiritual understanding, they're all connected.
Yeah. How do these ideas resonate with you? Obliquity, the limits of needs meeting, bridging social capital, story-rich lives. How does that fit with what you want to understand?
And maybe the final thought to leave you with, what does a modern adaptive zone look like for you, for communities seeking connection today?
How do we get beyond just transactional stuff and find that cascade of grace from real solidarity, this deep dive into journeying out? It really offers a map, doesn't it, for how we can all journey out in ways that count.